I'm not live yet.
Well, you could have said that at a better time. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Just waiting.
It's live on mine, so people get to hear us.
Don't Air Beef connection to come through.
Wow. It's not my connection. It's Streamlabs or StreamYard. I'm sorry.
I clicked the button.
You good? Cool.
It says going live. It's spinning.
Right. Okay. I'll let you do the intro then. So you say things when you're comfortable.
Okay, let me just
get comfortable. Yeah, work it out.
Yeah. All right, this is just more shit for me to edit. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of TabCaf Transmissions, the only Star Wars podcast that may be interrupted by a gas fitter this very evening.
That's the dream. That would make my day go from bad to good. So this podcast better get interrupted.
Let's talk about it. Bad?
I'm bad at, if I'm focusing on a thing, that's all I can think about. It's very unhealthy. So when I was told at like 2:33 that they would call me shortly, I'm like, great.
2:33.
I'm gonna
exactly.
Yeah. Well, 2:30, 2:03.
Oh, okay.
And during that call, they said, we'll call you shortly. I'm like, great. Shortly is great for me because then I don't have to fixate on this for so long. But that it didn't happen. Didn't happen. So I got very little done while I was
pretty close to naming and shaming some gas fitter.
Look, we'll see how it goes. If they still pull through, it's all good. If they don't, I'm going to write a very moderately worded Google review, and then they'll see.
With no star ratings, I don't actually want to mess up their business.
Yeah, I don't believe in. I feel like that's arbitrary and reductive. It's just my experience.
Yeah. So I started reading Temptation of the Force. I don't know if I can do it.
You said that every time.
No, but this time I really don't know if I can do it.
All right, that's fine. Me and Ilkin can talk about it. But today, what we're talking about is the Acolyte episode 6. So, any Star Wars news that we've missed since Monday? I guess we did the last episode very recently. I guess Star Wars Outlaws went gold, so shouldn't be pushed back release date wise.
You never know.
Probably.
There could be something.
Could be something. There always could be something.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, everything is good. No news. We only really have the Acolyte going on right now. As far as I'm aware, anyway. What about you?
Well, compared
you know of?
We talked about some of the other news with like Bounty Hunter on Monday because this is our second podcast of the week, so you can't expect there to be that much news.
I've been playing Revenge of the Sith,
right?
The Xbox game or PlayStation game, and I forgot like how much they extend certain sections of that game because Revenge of the Sith, there aren't really that like it's a long movie, but in a way, it's kind of short. Like Obi-Wan is at Utapau really quickly. Like he doesn't spend that much time with Anakin. So it's like when you fight Grievous, for example, which I just finished the final Grievous fight. There's like 16 parts to it. Like there's one part where they're fighting in a cave and Obi-Wan gets knocked out and Grievous throws a grenade in there and scampers away. And then Obi-Wan just walks through the smoke and is like, it's going to be harder than that to kill me. Which like, I don't know. If I were making a video game tie-in, I probably would have, instead of doing that, maybe like made a segment where you're chasing him on the little speeder bike, or not the speeder bike, on the where you're chasing him on his bike on your little creature.
Yeah, the iguana.
Yeah.
The iguana animations, they're expensive, so I wish that game had done a little bit more like fleshing out the one level where you're Anakin sitting up in bed after the nightmare. Because like you have the QuickTime event where you're pulling the covers down, but then like having the part where the cloth comes up and you have to like wipe off the sweat from his glistening pecs. I think that was you could have fleshed that out a little bit more.
For real though, Lego Star Wars the Skywalker Saga did this as well. No playable Battle of Coruscant. I don't get that.
That is weird.
Even like an on-rail shooting section, I think.
It's probably just so many assets because is there much? I don't think there's
a lot of space stuff in it. Like Yeah,
In
I know
the like
fact
the Revenge of
have
the Sith game, not the Lego one?
Revenge of the Sith, yeah.
Huh. Okay,
They've
I don't
got
remember that at all.
like, just in the background, but they've got the Venator, they've got the Recusant, they've got the Munificent, they've got a droid control ship because, like, part of the reason that the Invisible Hand crashes is because a random Venator crashes into a droid control ship, and it makes a big shockwave,
Mhm.
which, hey, I liked it. But, yeah,
Okay,
it actually holds up, like, gameplay-wise, it's really fun.
that's good.
Um, yeah, but I remember beating it in one sitting. And, it came out before the movie, which was a funny choice because it uses clips from the movie as cutscenes.
Yeah, a lot of the tie-in movie or tie-in material back then did that, but I guess having the actual clips from the movie is rarer than the book spoiling the plot that everyone already knew
I mean,
was
George
gonna
was also, like,
happen.
live streaming the creation of it, so, like, he was just built different.
I mean, Pablo Hidalgo was on set all the time showing everything that was happening in Insider. I think that was
Yeah,
Insider or whatever the online hyperspace, I think it actually was.
hyperspace, yeah.
But yeah, so overall, what are your thoughts if we're both enjoying the Revenge of the Sith game? What are your thoughts on the Acolyte episode Sith?
It was weird because in some ways I thought it was the most competently, like, shot episode. Maybe it was just, like, the change in scenery, maybe it was just the director, but, like, felt a lot more cinematic to me, but, like, it was also kind of another transitionary episode
Mhm.
where it's one that I thought was maybe, like, the best, but one that I'm probably not going to come back and watch,
Right.
um, because it's just, like, we really get some it's all about interpersonal relationships, which is fine, and I guess it was cool to see a bit more of the Sith fleshing out literally, um, but yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the payoff that the Acolyte's been able to do has been its strongest part, but I feel like the setup you can see where the ideas are going, and I think this episode has a lot of this where, like, the broad ideas are good, but there's just enough clunk kinda thrown in that
Yeah.
can sometimes throw it off. Like, the only thing that really stood out to me in this episode is kind of taking me out of it was that we got just so much more of Soul being like, "I'm about to tell you everything," which
Ugh,
I feel like we've had that too many times, especially
6
when
times.
the May and Soul parts of the episode kind of went back to the same well of
Yeah.
he's gonna go through the columns. He's not gonna go through the columns. He's gonna go to the columns. He's not gonna come. And like that's something that we talked about a lot with episode 1 and 2, where I said I was glad that they didn't kind of replay the same beat of oh, are the Jedi gonna think that that Osha killed Torben? And I feel like this was kind of the inverse of that, where they did play with that a bit more.
Mhm.
And with we got a lot of good information, a lot of good development with the OSHA and Chimere parts. Like it
Yep.
felt like they were really building that relationship, showing what's going on there, and had like we didn't learn a bunch of new stuff about exactly what happened with Chimere's past, but we had enough to kind of more understand where each character is coming from in the moment. And with the May and Soul parts, I feel like we didn't get that same level of development. I think that's my main
Yeah, that's a
criticism
really
of it.
good point. Like, the only thing I'm more confused, I guess, about what's going on there after Soul turns off his, he ended up kind of jumping away in the last minute when he could have met the Jedi, so I'm kinda curious
Mhm.
what's going on there. But yeah, I think that's a really good point, and, like, the switcheroo ended up being kind of a non-issue, which, like, that's how it like, May has a tattoo,
Yeah,
Osha doesn't. Like, the hair cutting, it's literally not going to cut it.
yeah.
Well, I will cut it, but I won't fool anybody. Um, but yeah, what did you, so what do you think I agree with you completely. That storyline, I'm sure it's going to go somewhere, but
Yeah.
last episode didn't do anything for me either. What did you think about, kind of the revelations regarding, Chimere? Like, what do you think is going on with him?
So one of the things that we really learned this episode is that he's got those scars, which we saw a bit of in episode 5. Now we see him like a lot more, like how big they are on his back. And like you were kind of saying on Twitter, and like we were talking about before, the the fact that these scars are there, like they're not wasting scenes with this. the
Yep.
fact that the light whip is introduced in the same episode as we see those scars, like, you're supposed to make that connection, I think.
Yeah.
So
It might be just a fake out, but
yeah, like, it could be Force lightning or something from a Sith Master, but, like,
mhm.
the big connection there is supposed like, I think you're supposed to come away thinking, "Okay, Vernestra did that, possibly as his Jedi Master." I think there's, like, the 5% outside chance that
Yeah.
Vernestra is, the big one of the big bads, at least. But it we heard more about his background having come from the Jedi at some point. Is he older than 36? I don't know, because
Yeah,
he's
something
talking about a
weird's
long
going
time
on
ago.
there because he really emphasized him being older than she expects, basically, or
But
being
would it
older than
be maybe he was like a youngling and then it's like 30 years ago, which
yeah.
for a 25-year-old like Osha would be a long, long time ago. Like, that would be why she doesn't know it at all. But
Mhm.
Vernestra looks great for 230 or whatever. So maybe they've got some skincare secrets that they're trading.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're we're just Vanessa's just old, and there's no explanation, like, she is just old. Um, so, yeah, I don't think they're gonna do, like, anything, like, weird messing with time, but it is a bit strange. Um, so what do you think about the possibility of is Khmer one of the 2 rule of 2 Sith right now?
At this moment, I feel like the answer is no, because there's so much of the theme is like getting cast away from stuff. Like, Kymir did it to May now. Osha had that with the Jedi. Kymir had that with the Sith. And that's probably why he feels like May and Osha would have been a good target for him, because like he probably relates in that sense. Even if he's
Mhm,
doing this for his own ends, he probably sees them as like, oh, why wouldn't they feel the way I feel? Uh, so I feel like at least at some point, Kymir was part of the Bainite line with his master, but he's probably been tossed from that pile.
mhm.
That's my take, at least, if I have to put
Yeah.
any money anywhere.
Yeah, no, I
What are you
agree.
feeling?
And, like, there was I don't think I'd really had that thought until last episode when
Mhm.
OSHA or he kinda just hints that, yeah, he's been thrown away as well, and she's like, "By the Jedi," and he's like, "Well," kinda hinting that, no, he's been tossed by multiple groups now as
Yeah.
well.
There's also the possible angle to that of like he doesn't want to give away more information about his master, because if he is still his master's apprentice, this plan was kind of risky of getting May to assassinate the other Jedi, and it has kind of revealed his seat. Like,
Mhm,
I can't remember if we talked about this last time, but I don't feel like sending May to do this in the first place was the worst move if you're trying to find someone and figure out if they're going to be able to help you take down someone like your master or some Jedi. Because there's this pre-built-in reason why May and Osha would want to go after the Jedi. And if
mhm,
May is killed in the line of doing that, then the worst case scenario is that information about Brendock comes out and you can't necessarily tie that back to him. So I feel like they had an out there, but it didn't work out very well for him.
yeah, and I mean, if he has been neglected, maybe he's a little less concerned about keeping the Rule
Yeah.
of 2 stuff completely secret, like, if he's been tossed. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to go into your theory for where they are? Because I know you were very excited about this.
Yeah, did we talk about it on the last podcast at all or no?
We
I can't
did
remember
bring up the
whether
planet name of like where the cortosis was from, but we didn't necessarily make the connection until afterwards.
right, so, I actually started rereading Plagueis a little bit because of this. I'm just at the part where he's slaughtering everyone on the Woebegone, and the
Hmm.
droid that he has, like, for the rest of the book is like, she must have said something really bad to him because she thinks Jedi are cops, basically, or the droid thinks Jedi are cops. Um, and lightsaber equals Jedi. But Plagueis opens with Plagueis opens with Plagueis and Tenebris checking out a cortosis vein on the planet Baldemnik. It ends with Plagueis killing his master Tenebris. With a he helps kind of with a cave in. But what's interesting is that for one, cortosis is really heavily regulated because in Legends, just like in canon, it basically neutralizes the weapon of the Jedi. But also description wise, it sounds a lot like the planet we see on screen in this episode does.
Mhm.
It's very barren and rocky and windswept, but also Plagueis even says it's beautiful at one point. It's an ocean world with kind of outcroppings. So
And then
pretty
you have
much
Ocean, OSHA, it makes sense.
ocean, OSHA. Um, Maybe a bit more tropical in the book than what we got on screen. And again, no confirmation that it is Baldemnik, but Leslie Headland said it's not Acto, which
Yeah.
yeah. So she's
So
been doing
RIP
some
that
Legends
theory.
ass pulls, so I think it's probably going to be Baldemnik.
Yeah. Yeah, at that point, I don't think there's any reason for it not to be Baldemnik, so I think it's a safe bet. But, like, we see the Cortosis ore in the room where they're working on or where he's working on the helmet, so I think you're on the money with that one.
Yeah, I
I
think
you
there
know,
was
you're wrong about most things, but this, I feel like you got it.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Was that shot at the end, was that the last time the actual, like, vein, the Cortosis vein was shown? 'Cause I didn't I was thinking back after watching it, I didn't remember it, before that actually popping in, but
I think you can see it when they're talking about May, I think?
okay.
I'd have to go back and check. But when they are talking
That's certainly
about,
highlighted at the end.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, I think there's some I mean, a little bit everywhere, but, like, I think when he's talking about why it's going to be different with her, like, partially, Kymir's been forced to reveal more to Osha than to May,
Mhm.
uh, but I kinda got vibes of the way that Palpatine ended up seeing Maul in Plagueis for how Chimera ended up seeing May of
Right.
like just kind of the rabid dog who's going after this specific revenge and isn't going to be able to see much beyond that. Like you can send them out to do a job now, but they're not going to be your long term partner. And
Mhm.
maybe you see something better with OSHA for that.
Mhm. Yeah, so you think OSHA, there's something different about her compared to May, at least to
I think
him?
at least, yeah, I think at least Chimera sees it that way.
Is
Like
that like
you
a
get the
romantic thing, you think, or just an interest he
well,
can't place? I think he's got maybe an interest in both of them together. I think maybe he's realizing now that he could have both of them because he says something about, like, the power of 2.
yeah, like it it probably is going in all of those senses. Like he wouldn't go take that bath knowing that she's seeing him if he
I mean,
didn't
it's
have to.
kind of refreshing.
It
Like,
well, yeah, it's a
literally,
little
that water
refreshing.
would be refreshing, but
It's workplace harassment as well if you're trying to have a job interview with this person who you've
yeah, I don't
kidnapped
remember
and
the
brought
Sith
to your
saying that's not
lair.
go to the Jedi if you don't wanna be harassed at the workplace.
Is that just what their policy is? This is what their freedom is? Is Chimera just a libertarian?
Yeah, walk away if you don't like it. Take swim and take the ship. Go ahead.
Take the dangerous rocks out to the ship and fly away.
Yeah,
Never
fly
said you
away.
couldn't leave.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Yeah, like I think he definitely sees more of an ability for them to be partners for now and sees Osha as like his true apprentice if he's gonna like continue on that Bainite line, if he's gonna like usurp his master. But do you think Osha's gonna take that? Like is the end game for the series or for the season gonna be Osha is in that position?
I don't know, like, I really have no idea. I can't figure out which way the either one of the characters is going. Like, I don't know what May was doing last episode. I don't know. She seems to be going back and forth. I don't know. It seems like she knows more about, the secrets that Saul has than Osha does.
Hmm.
Um, I think maybe whatever that past is probably going to be revealed maybe next episode,
Yeah.
and maybe that will kind of impact her. I don't know though. I don't really know what's going on with these 2 characters, and not to be too negative, but I also don't really care as much as I do about the overall kind of Sith plot that they're revealing. I find that a lot more interesting.
Yeah. Uh how much of an overall Sith plot do you think they're gonna be getting into though right now?
Almost none, but I do think we will see like what's going on at least a little bit. It might be like, yeah, you're an amateur running around here, and maybe you'll get swatted down by the big baddies.
Mhm.
But yeah, I probably not the bigger plot, but I just find that the Sith of the era is kind of the most compelling thing. Whether that's we're in like the whole thing about Plagueis is he wants to live for a long time. So Plagueis could be the master still. It could be Tenebris his master, who I
Yeah.
believe is canon, or it could be somebody completely different. Because I think you pointed this out in a past episode. The Plagueis lore, the legend in Return of the or Revenge of the Sith, rather, it doesn't. Palpatine kind of implies that Plagueis was his master in a way, but he could have been lying. There's also kind of some hints that he was a more legendary figure of old. So it could be anybody right now.
Yeah.
I think
It's like
I sorry, go ahead.
no, you finish.
I was just say I think with the Baldemnik connection, I think that Leslie Headland probably will use a Sith we know, but it could be anybody.
Yeah, like there is the possibility if we're taking some of the bigger strides from like some of the big picture stuff of the Sith from Darth Plagueis. Like there was the period at the start of the book, I think, where like I think part of what makes Plagueis turn on I might be getting the sequence of events mixed up here. But part of why Plagueis turns on Tenebris when he does is because Tenebris is training a second apprentice, and then
Sort
Plagueis
of,
kills
yeah.
him in that, or was it Plagueis
So
killed
what
him?
happened is Plagueis he gets the idea he sort of gets the idea that Tenebris doesn't see him as, like, a proper heir, like, and
Right.
he is I don't think he doesn't know about, what's the other Sith Venomous? He doesn't know about
Yeah, he's dead.
Venomous, but he gets the idea that he doesn't take him seriously, and that's partially why he kills him,
Mhm.
because he's so they're in the cave, and basically the little thing blows up, the the miner or whatever, and Tenebris kind of has some dark foreboding. He doesn't realize that that's because he's about to be killed by his apprentice, and Plagueis kind of says, "Yeah, I did this because if you valued me, you would have known that I am a bigger threat than, anything else."
There's a lot of jealousy in these Sith. It's not very healthy. They should
No, it's
probably
not a
find
good.
someone to talk about this with. But
But then
like
once he's dying, he's like, that was actually kinda sick." And he's like, he's fully dead, like, he's basically it basically explains, like, his brain is half out, and he's like, "Yep, make sure you do this, 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 don't do this, like, always remember if you go to Tim Hortons, you can get a really good order by doing this." And he's like,
clean up the lint trap after every round in the dryer.
"Yep, yep."
Like I feel
Just
like that could be an or some inspiration for whatever Chimere's position is. Like he could be either the Venomous or the Plagueis in that situation. If they're going with Tenebris as the master or with Plagueis as the master, I feel like that could be the situation we're in. But
yeah, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and one it's kind of despite the fact there's 1,000 years between the Bane, uh, trilogy and Phantom Menace, you really don't get many stories in
no,
the era. Like, I think we know maybe 6 Sith by name. The vast majority of them
yeah,
are named in Plagueis or in, like, articles or whatever. Like, there's not really other stories that you directly see. You see
no.
some told, but
Yeah, and I think like the one who gets the most attention, like you get a couple names thrown in Plagueis, but the one who gets the most attention
the one who trashes the,
might
essence
be
transfer, the one who turns good.
which
Forget
one
his
was
name.
that?
There's, like,
I
the
was
Sith
thinking
who
Darth Riven, who might be at like he might even be before Bane, and just
I
gets
was thinking
Revan's
of the
name
Sith
wrong.
who there's, like, the Sith who turns good, and then, he turns good, and then he basically, like, removes the essence transfer. Uh, I can't remember his name. Someone in chat probably knows.
Okay, so Riven is before as well, so that doesn't even count. Like I think people assume there's a lot more stories about these characters when they come up than there are, especially if you're
Yeah,
primarily
there's
learning
almost
about
nothing.
legends through
There's almost nothing.
through like lore videos or something. Like most of this just does not get talked about at all. You get some mentions of what they might have done through the Plagueis novel, but other than that, it's like that's it.
I tried to look up every Bane era Sith, and I accidentally put Beverly Bane era Sith, and it was like
Hmm.
Beverly. Well, I'm not gonna say what it said, but was it Darth Gravid? Is that the one who? Yeah, it was. Yeah, Darth
What
Gravid.
a terrible
Mhm.
name. Can you imagine if Gravid was the one that brought the Sith back into power? What a fucking embarrassment.
Yeah. Well, he turns to the light side, so
Then you have Vectivus as well, who may or may not be a real Sith. Like you never know what Lumai like is what Lumai is saying to Jason even remotely true? Probably not.
yeah,
But Darth businessman, not great.
yeah, yeah. He's like, it is one thing that I thought was interesting reading Plagueis again. Is after they talk about saving the galaxy,
I
the
sorry,
Sith.
I have to call this out. Darth Riven. Riven is not Darth Revan. This is a different character who took their Sith name in an
Not
RPG
weird
source
Canadian
book.
accent.
It's some other Sith who tried to name themselves after Revan, but misread an inscription. So their name was a misspelling of a prior Sith Lord.
Is that actually true? Is that where the name comes from?
I'm it's less clear in universe whether they knew they were getting it wrong, but it was I'm 99% sure because or I'm 99% sure that that is the intention.
Okay.
Yeah, very sorry. I was getting a lot of flack in chat for this, but I know what I'm talking about. It's very dumb.
Yeah. Um. Okay. So reading the novel, one thing that you don't get from the Sith is usually you hear about how they're doing it for themselves and for power, but Tenebrous does actually mention that they can start the process of saving the galaxy from themselves, basically, where in their own twisted way, like they do think they have the best interest, sort of, or at least they're pretending they do. Um, I wonder whether we're gonna get any of that in this show. Probably not. Where Kamir seems very just he's in it for himself. He's doing it because he wants to be free. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, like there was probably a lot of that in the Bay Knight Sith, where like how much of what Plagueis and Palpatine did really required that much forethought. It was like, oh, I'm going to get elected, and I'm going to write some bullshit laws, and then I'm king of the world. Like, did you need
well, the
more
clone
than a
trooper thing was
generation of
pretty.
planning for that?
Oh, I think like the answer would be the generation of planning is like the several generations is like the overall degradation of like society and like
Hmm.
the Jedi, where they're in a weakened state, I guess.
Yeah. So the individual depravities of the Sith are the point in that. Like, so Chimera is free to do what he wants to make sure the Jedi learn about what they did on Brendok, and that takes away a bit. And they can all claim they're doing work, even though they're just kind of doing whatever they want.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. You just felt like murdering.
Yeah. Why wouldn't he?
It is kind of funny how like the major plot or major discussion point on the internet for the past like 3 weeks they handled it in a pretty reasonable way. I thought about like the
The
Jedi discovering the Sith.
yeah, like there's been a lot. Like I understand if you dislike what the outcome is for any of that stuff. Like
Hmm.
everyone's gonna have their own opinion on that. But there seems to be in almost any Star Wars thing a lack of willingness to just kind of wait until you know the story before you decide like what's going on. Like
Yeah,
the exact same thing happened with the cortosis, where there were a lot of complaints about the fact that no one stopped in the middle of the fight last episode to be like, or like episode 5 to say, "Oh, this is cortosis, and that's why I can't get through." Blah 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 blah. And like that wasn't relevant to the moment. You can, as the audience, be like, "Oh, this is happening. What's going on?" And then even the next week, they had someone say it. So like, you just give it a bit of time, some of that stuff will go away. And if you dislike that still, great, but at least like you're talking about the thing that's being presented rather than trying to anticipate what's going to make you mad once it's done.
yeah. I mean, yeah. It's just like, listen, I'm gonna put it bluntly. It's not a lot of people. It's not in their best interest to get it right. You know, what do they what's the saying? It's like never expect truth from a man whose job is to be stupid or a man whose job is to be honest. Or
Yeah.
sorry, not honest. You know the saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I can't remember exactly what it is.
yeah, like I think one of the biggest things right now is like how is Soul like whether or not Soul is going to be able to get any information to anyone else. So like there's 2 points of failure for the Jedi there and getting that information, which you like the first one is Soul, who you brought up earlier, and the second is Vernastra, and I think they're probably the two biggest things to still talk about.
Mhm.
Where with Soul, I think part of why he leaves when he did is he knows he's with May and he's been waiting 20 years for this like he even says I've been thinking basically daily to what I'd tell you if I had the chance. And it almost seems like he needs absolution from the girls more than anything else.
Yeah,
Like
for
he
sure.
needs to get this out and either have them judge him or forgive him. And now he has that opportunity and the Jedi might kind of take that more personal element away from him.
Yeah, we definitely might see that might happen, or we could see a full swap in like the May and Osha character,
Yeah.
where where in him kind of seeking absolution, she learns a bit more kind of about the person he is.
Like May, I think from that perspective, like May is a much simpler, like not a much simpler character, but her motivations as a character are a lot simpler, where there's a lot more of like, you're loyal to me, I'm loyal to you kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like it's the way that she views the world seems to be a lot more black and white in that sense, where Osha has a similar thing where she's trying to view the world in like white and white, but she's more fighting against like she's fighting to see things a certain way, whereas May is just angry. And I feel like it's easier for Soul to get through that anger than it
Mhm.
even would be to get through the betrayal that Osha would feel hearing the same story. So I think like May is almost easier to pull back from that ledge.
Yeah. Yeah, because she just needs kind of a little,
Little nudge.
a little nudge. But you're right. Where I think for Osha, it's probably going to come crashing down at some point, especially
Yeah.
where she has such a relationship with Saul, where he's kind of like a fatherly figure, obviously,
Yeah. Like
and where he's probably not going to be the one to tell her what happened. Like,
yeah, I
she,
think that's the biggest thing is like she'll feel even more betrayed because Soul had 3 lines saying he's gonna tell her what's happened, but then he just didn't. And all
yeah,
that time that they were training.
which has me a little concerned. And this was on the question that I saw in chat. We've got 2 episodes left, and we're going to need flashbacks, unless
Mhm.
they dramatically increase the length. Um, like seeing Chimera swimming in the pool might do. Um, I don't know how they're going to wrap this up.
I don't know, I feel like that's the perennial thing, like, I feel like you go back to episode 13 of every Bad Batch season, you go back to
Yeah.
episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett, 5 of Kenobi or whatever. I I don't know that there's that much to actually wrap up right now. We gotta get the Brendock story, and then we've gotta know where May and Osha kind of end up right now. Like, I feel like there's fewer things going on than there normally are. Like, it
Mhm.
depends on how complex that Brendock situation is. If it ends up being another episode 3, I don't think we can do a full flashback episode and then wrap like the modern day stuff up in one. But if it's like 25-75 flashback to newer content, or not newer content, that's a weird way to describe it, but newer
Mhm.
story, modern day story.
Mhm.
I don't think we'll be left with that many hanging threads.
No, I agree, but it's like hanging threads. No, but like, what's the meaningful takeaway? I guess,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like that is kind of the issue I had with the Bad Batch
Yeah.
final season as well, where I was like, okay, like they're telling a story, but like, what has this
Right.
season really added? And has it, furthered some big narrative where, like what's the takeaway of the show? What's the
Yeah.
takeaway of the Acolyte? Is it this story happened, which is self-contained and which was finished, or is there like some greater, meaning? I guess
Yeah. I
which
think a
not
lot
every
of that
story
will
needs
come
to
down
have.
to their choice, right? Like, how impactful is the choice they make when they have this information going to be, and whether or not OSHA gets the information. It's like we know May is going to get that information next week. So we have, as much as like my complaint this week was that her story didn't really get the same progression that OSHA's did. I feel like that does come next week. And then does OSHA learn about it? How does OSHA react to it? I think getting that into one episode, episode 8, will probably be a lot. But I think it entirely hinges on that. But I don't think there is a broader point of like, with Star Wars being so much more of like the connected storytelling,
Mhm.
like, yeah, you probably are more inclined to have these things where it's just like, oh, this is the next part of this, and then that just moves on, and then it's kind of just you got to leave enough threads that maybe someday you'll rejoin these characters and do other random events rather than being a story. It's just a series of events. So I kind of like I get where the fear would be there.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Can you do, in a way that's not completely ridiculous, a live action Bith Sith Lord?
I was thinking that earlier. I don't think you can do that with a Bith or a Mun.
I don't know. I think the Mun. Well, I don't know. Like we haven't seen all the Muns we've seen have been computer generated.
Yeah.
At least, yeah, because Sandhill, yeah, they've all been computer generated, and they all look bad. In Revenge of the Sith, they look bad.
Yeah.
Um, I actually think they're both really creepy species, which like plays to their like as the hidden Sith Lord, it plays well.
Yeah.
Um, like I see pictures of Tenebris where he's got like a breather on. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's supposed to be the one he's wearing on Beldemnik, like because otherwise he's not. He doesn't usually wear a breather, as far as I know. But like maybe that's one way to make it work. But like
I
I'm
think
looking at
that's the play.
yeah. Or maybe give him like a Mal or not Malgus, a Malik style like chin could be
Hmm.
kind of cool. Because I
I
think
like,
it's just such a striking like a Bith is such a striking image. It could be
yeah.
cool.
They look like dicks. Let's just be
Well,
honest.
dicks with vaginas,
Yeah.
if we're gonna be
So
technical.
as like I think that is why Tenebris is the most likely of the two, because I feel like he's just easier to do. Like
Mm.
you put that breather on, and then you don't have to
And it's
worry about the mouth
creepy.
being yeah,
I think you can have some real creepy scenes where like his white like skull like skin is just like in the back, like in his with this large head. It could be very
yeah.
striking.
Like I've kind of
Um,
been thinking about that since Jackie showed up, where or not Jackie, the Zygerian Padawan that Yord has that has just not come up
she
since.
looked terrible. Yeah,
Where like
should have
I
done
think
her
she
in.
looked
Oh,
fine, but the problem is you have to have them as a character that's speaking, and that makes the process like that makes having an alien character so much harder. Like
she
if they
looked
were a
like
background, that's whatever.
yeah.
It'd probably look better if it was just a background. It's like the
She
problem
just
with
like she had the Star Trek effect where like she
yeah,
looked like every Star Trek alien ever. Where it's like they've got money for makeup, but not money for suits.
yeah.
Um,
Well, it's just so much harder, like to get into that makeup every day. The
yeah,
cost of having
for
that
a show.
character
Yeah,
versus just another species, and like that's easily the main reason that you wouldn't get that kind of thing in live action.
yeah, and like that's kind of the benefit. That's kind of why I think it might be Tenebris as well, because you said Tenebris, right? You thought it would be?
Yeah.
Like, for Plagueis, the fact is they haven't done a live action Mune yet.
Mhm.
Um, Bith, they've been live action since the start. I don't know how many Bith have been in how many live action Bith we've seen since I guess we see one in episodes 4 and 6, but
Yeah. Well, the thing that I think makes Bith easier is that, especially if you don't care about the mouth, it's the same thing with the Duros, right?
Mhm.
Where the reason the episode 4 Duros look better than some of the other live action stuff is because they don't have to say anything. Like the ones
Yep,
that are just sitting there in the cantina, they're just sitting there. So if you
yep,
have a breather over their mouth, and the Bith are bulkier, so you just put on layers versus the Mun, which are like tall and lanky, you
yeah.
can't take away the same way you can add. So I think it's just an easier choice.
Yeah, I also don't believe, like I think that the Plagueis character is pretty popular. I don't think they're going to change him to be another alien at this
Yeah.
point. Um Like they definitely left ambiguity, I believe. Like if I think we've only had one image of Plagueis, and I think it was from like one of the Dark Side reference books, where he's just like, yeah, he's just a hood with eyes.
Mhm.
Um, but oh no, actually, it says he's immune, so or moon. Well, I don't know, however you say it, but yeah, I with also with a Bith, you just have the guy voicing it. You know, he doesn't even need to be there. Whoever it is, I know there's one actor people have pointed out was leaked or was one of the trades connected him to the show. I don't know, but yeah, I'm guessing it'll be Tenebrous, and I think
Yeah.
he'll be a Bith, and I think it'll
Well,
be if they do it well, it'll be really cool.
I got something if you wanna address your clarification on this.
No live action, right? So what I meant is in episode 3, they're computer generated and poorly. Look up Sand Hill. Sand Hill.
Yeah,
Like
like,
it's not good.
it's a lot more expensive to make any kind of, like, active CGI character for that too, so it's probably not a thing. Like, if you have a choice, the shows seem to prefer practical effects as well, which
Right.
I like more, even if it does end up with some wonkier stuff in some situations. But like I preferred having Hera and Ahsoka and any of the other alien live action characters being like practical insofar as it's practical to make them practical. But
Yeah, and there's like it's also different if you want Zeb to be computer generated versus if
yeah,
you want the big bad guy of your show to be computer generated. Zeb, you know, he's a sidekick, he's a hero. He doesn't need to be intimidating really. But you want your big Sith to be, you know, scary right off the bat. And like, oh wow, he looks like when you pause the fight scenes with Palpatine episode 3 and you see the PS2 model they have in there for him.
but like, that's also why Zeb's only in one scene too.
Yes.
Like why he doesn't show up in Ahsoka at all. But
Yeah. He'll come. He'll come. Santa looks okay for
season
early
two.
2000 standards. Yeah, I mean, it's the same with the clones. I appreciate George Lucas didn't give a shit, but like the clones look distracting. They're
Yeah,
probably it would have been difficult to do it any other way, and we're also used to it that like it's like okay, yeah, that's what the clones look like, you know. But there's like, you
yeah,
know, it we've come a long way in a couple decades, but like it's computer generated people at least or creatures are still not
yeah.
indistinguishable, and they probably never will be.
Yeah. Like, some of them do look really good, like, Zeb did look really good, it's just you can only spread that around so much, like, you only get so much screen time you can use for that, and it's still not gonna look perfect, but you could argue that it looks as good or better than practical effects for for the same suit might be, but I think it does come down to budget in that situation, but,
Honestly, maybe this is crazy. I think the best fully computer generated things like to approximate how you do it in live action in terms of like feeling Transformers, where like
yeah,
I see the Transformers and I'm like, you know what? Okay, that looks like if you could build one, it probably would kind of look like that.
yeah. The
That's
CG
because they're not
I
people;
hate
they're not
those
living.
movies, but, you know,
Oh yeah, yeah.
like, do you think what was I even gonna say? I don't even know what I think, so never mind. Oh, right. The one of the things I see a lot of like criticism of the Ahsoka clone troopers. It's like, oh, we had they don't look like the movies. But like a lot of the times when people complain about that, they're talking about comparing it to the CGI armor that you literally could not fit in if it was real. Like the helmets just wouldn't be able to go on, and it makes me very sad. But
I think part of the reason people complain about the live action Troopers so much is because they associate it with fan films, where, like,
yeah,
for a long time, the Troopers were CG, and then you'd see a fan film, and it would be like a perfect Stormtrooper where, like, this live action Stormtrooper, it's like, yeah, that's a Stormtrooper. They've always been like that. Where,
yeah,
like, the clone troopers for a long time were only physical armor in fan fictions.
yeah.
That's my guess, but I
That's fair.
actually I thought they looked great in pretty much everything.
But I guess for the Acolyte, the last thing we haven't really talked about too much yet is Vernestra herself, because Vernestra kind of takes a bigger role in this episode. She's the smallest plot, but her own plot in this episode. We see her talking to a senator about how there's this kind of inquiry that's going to be going into the Jedi, but like as long as you guys are being upfront about everything, it's fine, right? So nothing could set that off course right now. But
Yeah.
then we also have her deciding to go to Kofar to see what's going on. And I
Instantly
think
just fucking slaughters a bug, doesn't try anything.
yeah. What do you make of the theories that Vernestra might be a little bit dark side?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we're supposed to be wondering that. I think that's one of the things they're doing a good job of putting out there for mystery. I think she's kind of just got a stick up. Um, like I think she's just world weary, and I'm a little less familiar with her character in uh the High Republic era books because she's really not in too many of the adult books. Like she's definitely
Mhm.
more of a young reader character, and I skipped some of those. But I don't think she's dark side. And I would be disappointed, I think, if they went that route.
Yeah. Yeah, like I think it's not impossible, and I'm mostly entertaining it because like my I'm thinking that her being Sith would take away from like the potential presence of a different person as Chimere's master, just basically. And I
Mhm.
think that's the direction they're going. But I've been wrong about we've been wrong about other theories before, so I don't want to just entirely discount it because like there is these little things that can point to that, especially just the fact that she's just super cold throughout everything. But that might just be how the character's written right now. But
Yeah,
it might be an intentional misdirect with that as well.
yeah.
But like, what do you think about the bug thing? What stands out to you about the bug?
I mean, she's on site, which is cool. I mean, it's got a couple things like I think for one, it's meant to show her. It's meant to compare her to this like feeble little Jedi loser she brought with her for some reason, who like doesn't even sense the bug. She's got the thing fucking impaled, like home run to the next town over.
Mhm.
And then we talked about how it's also to kind of have the viewer questioning whether these very whip like I will say as well, when it comes to scars, a whip is a real weapon, like in the
Yeah.
real world. A lot of us can imagine what the scar of a whip would look like, and it's a pretty striking image as well. Like it has obvious connotations to slavery and mistreatment of people. So it's it is kind of a disturbing implication that this guy may have been whipped by a Jedi, and not just like a real whip, but a laser whip.
Yeah, and I think even in universe, I'm not as familiar with the books for Nestra's in as the other ones, but on top of like things like her being hesitant to go to hyperspace because she has weird reactions to it being pulled from the books. Like I think there was discussion in the books about her like the fact that light whips are more associated with dark side users when she had chosen to use it, being like a thing that she was at least cognizant of. So it's not an entirely, I don't think it's lost on her or the showrunners that this is an association people might make.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
it's a whip, like, it's not
yeah,
like a
it's
sword is
not
like a
subtle.
noble yeah, a whip is like it's a whip.
Yeah,
Um, it is kind of interesting that Khmer built himself a Shoto, though.
yeah. That's the thing that makes me think like Vernestra is definitely his Jedi master at least, because
Mhm.
like I was looking forward just to the general idea of like, oh, we're gonna see the Shoto versus Light Whip fight, a little contrived, but whatever, I'll take it. But like, if they started from the perspective of we want to do that fight, what? How can we make that make sense? Oh, he built that because he has this experience with Vernestra's whip. I think that'd be a really good uh way to kind of square that circle. So I think that's the direction they're going.
Maybe she defeated him in combat or something,
Hmm.
um, and, like, maybe he wasn't maybe he was in training as, like, a Sith apprentice, and maybe he attacked her with, like, not a lightsaber, but, like, something where she didn't realize, that he was a Sith, but she still struck him down or injured him,
Yeah.
and that was enough for him to get dropped by his master. Or maybe his master just assumed that he died, or maybe he was not nearly fatally wounded or something, and that kind of led to where we are now. Who knows? There are
So
definitely some options
maybe
though.
maybe like an Anakin and Palpatine situation where like Vernestra finds out that he's been dabbling a little bit, kicks him out of the order, thinks
Yeah,
that she's solved it, and then there's kind of the like maybe some other attachment that he'd had made it harder for him to like step away from the dark side, and then that kind of mirrors Sol and Osha's relationship.
yeah,
So
yeah, something like
that
that. Yeah,
could be an option.
yeah. Maybe it'd be like if Mace Windu just kicked Anakin's ass, like threw him out a window. Where like Anakin is like, okay, imagine Palpatine, imagine Mace just confronts Palpatine without him dueling him and knowing he's a Sith,
Yeah.
and then Anakin comes and intervenes, but Mace Windu kicks his ass. Maybe even thinks he kills him.
Hmm.
Maybe it's kind of a situation like that where like
Yeah.
she thought something was up but didn't realize kind of the full extent. Where like if you see Anakin, step in to protect Palpatine, your first thought is, "Oh, he's a Sith Lord," and in his case, he wasn't then. But yeah,
Yeah, I think this kind of ties into one of our first emails here, so maybe we'll jump into that.
sure.
Oh, actually, there's some super chats you had, I think, that we were gonna
Yeah.
get to
Okay,
first,
let's do the super
and then
chats.
we'll jump to some of the emails.
Okay, so we had the first one was asking whether there's gonna be questions or emails tonight. Yes. The second one comes from Joel, who says, "Do you think that the Sith are doing the double agent life thing of being oligarchs?" Which, I mean, they weren't technically oligarchs, but they were always they were usually high status people.
Yeah, I don't think that was a consistent through line for the Sith. I think like even with Tenebris and Plagueis, we saw that like Plagueis was doing that, Palpatine was doing that, but it didn't seem like it was a standard thing for everyone. So
Yeah, Tenebris was
I
a
think that's
ship guy,
more.
wasn't he, or something?
Wasn't he a scientist of some kind? You've read that more recently than I have, so
Yeah.
I mean you're reading it now. But yeah,
Shocking
like
memory. Thank you.
Bane was just a soldier, but then he was part of like the actual Sith army. Xana was like low enough that she could pose as a Jedi and get into the library with her fake library card for a while, for like 2 weeks. So, and then
Yeah,
everyone
more
else,
so
we have
like
no
the
idea.
thing that people did after that to hide, like Vectivus was quite wealthy,
Yeah, but again,
That
we don't know if
yeah,
he's even real.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we just know so little about that period of Sith and what each individual one might have been doing. Where
yeah,
like there was probably a whole variety of different positions they were in. So if you had an oligarchic master, maybe they saw value in having an apprentice that was more underworld, kind of like the Palpatine and Maul relationship versus the we're leading the two opposing political factions here. What a surprise
yeah,
of Palpatine and Tyrannus.
yeah, yeah.
And I just became the first person to just naturally use Dooku's actual Sith name. You're welcome, everyone. Poor guy.
Yeah, I never bought Dooku as like a true Sith.
No. Palpatine wasn't planning on keeping him. I don't know if Dooku was
He's
planning on
like the
keeping him
definition
either.
of a dark Jedi to me, but
Yeah.
he
Someone who thinks
he
they're a
buys
great
into it.
Jedi.
Yeah,
Dooku is a great Jedi in that he thinks he's a great Jedi, but he's actually just a
he's just a racist
dark side.
asshole. Let's hop into emails, Zoe. Those are all the super chats.
All right.
Not paying the podcast bills with this episode. I'm joking.
Look, we'll answer any super chat questions, any of please. But yeah, so Austin sent us an email a week ago and then did a follow up for this
Respect
episode.
the grind.
But it's basically along the lines of like many. So I'm going to read part of the email from last week because it's basically building on the same idea. But like many, I found last episode 5 of the Acolyte exciting, but it also crystallized a concern that I felt simmering for much of the series. I'm feeling mixed about how the series is seemingly critiquing the Jedi as an institution and where those criticisms are coming from in universe. Seems like based on 2 comments there was some kind of mind wiping or memory altering coming from the Jedi, and the Acolyte are taking, and the Acolyte is taking on the Jedi kidnapped kids as one of its themes. After night, it seems almost guaranteed that Soul will be killed by disguised May or Osha herself. Uh, so basically, how do we feel about that framing of Jedi critique, and do we feel like the Acolyte is maybe being too nihilistic?
Nihilistic. That guy shut up. Shut up. No, I'm joking. I know.
Well,
I feel like
nihilist.
so far it's mostly been limited to critiquing individuals,
Mhm.
rather than like we haven't seen any big flaws in the order yet. Where like yeah, what's her name? Inestra? No, not
What?
not Vernestra. The fuck. What's the Jedi that gets killed right at the beginning? Why am I forgetting her name?
Carrie Ann Moss.
Yeah, Carrie Ann Moss. Isn't it in Indara? Yeah,
Indara.
Indara.
Indara. Yeah.
Where like, yes, the Jedi shouldn't. What the Jedi do with children is a bit weird, but she's like also like especially weird about it. It's like it seems like all the Jedi on that strike team or whatever it was had some weird fucking issues going on. But like, I don't
Mhm.
know if you can say that that's directed towards the Order as a whole or is currently just more personal failings.
Yeah.
Like the Jedi aren't perfect. Like like Luke is not perfect. Obi-Wan and Yoda aren't perfect. Um, and there's people moving in the shadows as well.
Yeah. I think one of the bigger things that Star Wars thematically will be struggling with, or not struggling with, but like one of the struggles that Star Wars is trying to portray is the idea of how are these institutions that have good or bad elements able to be upheld in a way that both acknowledges the good without whitewashing the bad and just pretending like, oh, all the Jedi are always going to be really good. And
Mhm.
so I don't think the series or Star Wars more generally is trying to portray or take the approach of like everything the Jedi is doing is fucked up and like you should dislike all the Jedi. Where like I think Soul is a good example where it's a character where we're supposed to clearly very much sympathize with the emotional state he's in and the idea that he's trying to do the right thing, but ultimately this withholding of information because he's taking this kind of paternalistic attitude and
Yeah.
deciding that he knows what's best is ultimately hurting the people he was trying to help in this situation more than if he had just been honest about it. So like I feel like they are systemic critiques both of the Jedi as an institution and as of Jedi as individuals, but I don't think the idea is supposed to be that oh the Jedi are just evil kidnappers. I think they're putting forward that perspective from the antagonist and showing that there is something valid to the perspectives that they are bringing to the table, but I don't think it's supposed to be like oh you're supposed to think Chimera is right or you're supposed to think that the
Yeah.
witches are entirely right. It's like there's a block that happens in the communication, and that's where the breakdown is occurring. And this block for the Jedi is part of what stops them from being able to address the threat that comes up with Palpatine.
Yeah, like the Jedi are never evil. Like even at their worst, I mean, certain individuals are evil, but like the biggest critique is that like they fuck up and like aren't they don't do as right as they can, or
Yeah,
like they let bad things happen. But like without the Jedi, you just got the really powerful Sith lords running around doing whatever
yeah,
they want. Like arguably the most evil thing Palpatine does is wipe the Jedi out, and later he goes and destroys planets and shit. But
yeah. Like I think there is something to the idea that like the Jedi are supposed to be the good guys, but then they do have these very baked in, like fucked up, if you think about it, things. Not even if you think about it that much. And I think that is something that the series has to struggle with a lot, which might have no easy answer. Like particularly the Jedi are taking children, and there are situations where maybe that is framed as being, oh, they did the right thing for what's best for that kid, but then they're still training them. Like Chimere is not correct in how he treats any of these people.
But
But
he was also a kid at some point, taken in by the Jedi. Now he's got a big ass whip scar on his back.
yeah, and then he also like Jackie, the Jedi probably shouldn't be bringing people like these young
Yeah,
trainees into places like this.
I did like that line. You brought her.
Yeah.
That was a good line.
So yeah, I don't think the takeaway is supposed to be, oh, you should hate all Jedi. I don't think that is where they're going. Uh I do think that there are like part of the point is to make valid criticisms of that as an institution and some of the cultural hegemony that goes on with the Jedi and the High Republic in general. But I don't think it's nihilistic. I think it's about looking for the solution, like showing those problems, and like we know this ends poorly for the Jedi, but I think within showing those problems, there's the idea of like maybe some of the individuals are able to find some solution in the short term. So I don't think it's going to be
Or we
bad.
kind of know they aren't really in the end.
Well,
Like
for
they,
some of the like, yeah, we know the Jedi as a whole are fucked, but maybe some individual stories have a slightly happy ending for a year before those get killed again.
yeah, like when you're watching what's that? What was that game show they did? The kids and
Kid Nation.
it was like the Temple Run game basically.
Oh, the Jedi Temple Challenge or
Like,
whatever it's
damn,
called?
George Lucas has to kill all these kids himself. That's crazy.
Yeah. It like, it's a movie that culminates in a school shooting, so it's not
Maybe don't introduce more children.
Yeah,
Speaking of deleting children, my shout out to my buddy Alex who got a vasectomy today,
okay, good
and
for him.
when he was waiting there beforehand, and he sends me. I'll just see if I can play the video on the screen. But he says some lady comes into the room where he's in and starts go. Oh, I gotta clean this, and what she had to clean was. Oh yeah, here we go. It was just a poster, just a we got Boba Fett, we got Han Solo, we got I think Ahsoka's on there, Mandalorian. So yeah,
Got everyone, whole gang's laughing.
what's that?
Whole gang's laughing.
Palpatine was there. Like imagine you getting your balls snipped and you got Papa Palpatine looking over you.
Do it.
Django would be disappointed. One child. Huh.
Can Django afford the child support payments? Camino comes after him.
Why are you assuming that he's not performing the majority of the child rearing? He's got an
Well,
apartment with the kid.
Camino, what's the daycare situation on Camino? Like if the Republic
The
defaults
daycare is you
on
learn
that,
how to fire a fucking gun.
if the Republic defaulted on that payment, like does Camino go after Jango Fett?
Maybe. Why is my camera all fucked? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
Probably because you tried to hold up the poster and now you're paying for it.
Yep.
We have
Not
a
with my dad's
question.
reference, though.
What's that?
Continue.
You're very far away.
Oh, sorry. No, just continue. Sorry.
So the next email is from Adam, who asks, with the Acolyte showing us the Sith within this era and even including a few characters from the novels, is there a chance we could see Chimere's predecessors in some of the Phase 3 novels or a connection to them?
I mean, it's almost over, so I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it'll be hard to work in too many more to Phase. Like, I think a lot of the planning for Phase 3 already happened unless they already planned some kind of connection. If there's anything, I feel like it'd be a small Easter egg.
Yeah,
But
they've
I haven't
they've
read
not
Temptation.
even.
So.
I remember we were talking when we started. I at least assumed that the Sith would play into the later phases as kind of the big. But I mean, I started reading the new book, and there's like a whole new thing now, like the Blight, which I don't even know what that is. So they seem to be pretty busy.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised either way at this point, I guess.
I mean, they're supposed
It's
to
so
be
far
at their zenith now, basically, right? So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like maybe the Nameless will connect to them somehow, but I mean, I really shouldn't say anything until I've read at least Temptation of the Force for our next episode, which will be me and Elkin, it sounds like, not you.
I'll give it a try, but I don't know. I got the first chapter was my favorite character too, the fucking chef guy. Um, you know what I'm talking about,
Dexter?
right? The old guy. Yeah, the old
Oh,
Jedi.
Porter?
Porter
Porter
Angle.
Angle? Yeah.
I'm like, nah.
Look, if you don't like it, you don't like it.
Yeah. I
But
just don't want to come in. I like listen, I know how many people really like the High Republic. I don't want to spend an hour shitting on it when like you and Ilkin could probably meaningfully engage on it.
yeah. I mean, if you don't want to do it, then don't do it. It's fine.
Oh,
save yourself the reading. But
I know my
if you
pictures on
change your
both your
mind,
shows. I'm trying to fix it. Does I mean
the next question comes from Ian. It's a non-acolyte question. I'm only going to take the one non-acolyte question right now because it's been a while since we've done emails. But Ian says, I was wondering what Qui-Gon was supposed to do with Anakin according to the Jedi policies. Did he have a flyer for the agricultural corps he was supposed to give, or corps, he was supposed to give to Shmi before leaving? I'd imagine they would want to remove Force sensitives from situations that could push them to the dark, or at least know who is out there.
just drop his ass off. Let a hawk back take care of him.
Yeah. I feel like they generally thought if we don't teach them the Force, no one else is right now, so we'll just leave them.
Yeah,
Probably a big mistake, but
probably
I
just
think that
return him to his mother. Honestly,
yeah.
because why would you separate him?
Yeah, like at that point, you're just doing more damage by separating them.
Yeah,
Like you're not going to train him if you're just taking him to say we're not going to train you because go fuck yourself. Like there are a lot of Palpatine and Legends, at least there are a lot of Palpatine's Dark Jedi that came from the agricultural corps because they were upset at being treated that way. But
fixed it. Yeah,
nice.
exactly.
But thank you, Ian. Our next email is probably our most important email that we've ever gotten. So this comes from the Oreo Corporation.
Let's go.
Saying
Fucking god,
greetings.
we're waiting for this one.
Our squad Oreo, we want to give our squad Oreo, comma, we want to give you original potential to become part of fascinating launch of new Oreo flavor. Oreo Pokemon. Consider to yourself a 30-second video of you with a sparkle in your eyes telling subscribers about delicious and jokey Pokemon Oreo, presented in action and narrate impressions. Our brand Oreo recommend you best working conditions, compensated advertising, and transmitting
That's
necessary
work conditions. I
materials.
work for myself. What the fuck do you mean?
Email us to clarify integration details. All the best, Oreo Corporation. From the official Oreo Corporation email of Merdia Kolfrisad at vp.pl.
It's almost as good as the one I got from San Pellegrino today, which I think is a water company.
Yeah.
Or like a sparkling water, and the subject line was just promote us. So.
Yeah. At least they're to the point.
And
We
then
do
I
have
got another one
one.
today where Walmart has a free iPhone 15 Pro for me. So
Oh fuck! Why are you even here
it's
right
not
now
about
when you
that.
can get a? You could be getting that right now, and you instead you're here listening to this bullshit.
I've got a 15 Pro. I'm good.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
All right, our final email is from Edward, and it raises the possibility of, or sorry, we actually talked about this a little bit. This is a second last email from Edward, saying Osha. So this was from earlier on in the season, and it's talking about this as kind of like the Acolyte being kind of a coming out story for Osha. Some of the questions that he asked, or some of the points that he brings up about Osha have been kind of addressed by other episodes. But I did want to bring up just as part of Osha's characterization right now, the fourth point of Edwards is Osha refuses to lie to the Jedi, saying, I don't want to lie. I want to say what's in my heart. This positions Osha's desire to be a Jedi as core to her identity, fundamental part of it. This is the most convincing part about this being kind of like a coming out story. So the idea at the start was that she was coming to Coruscant and finding all this after kind of a sheltered upbringing. But I feel like this does bring up something that is important to her, of like that kind of secrecy and betrayal is going to hurt her more than May. But
Yeah, no, I
yeah.
like that idea. It's the you're in a small town and you get to it's a good theory.
Yeah. So like that was from much earlier, but I did think it was
pretty
worth
prescient
bringing up
then.
that point because we
Yep.
did touch on that a bit with Osha.
Mhm.
And finally, from Adam, Adam wants to say, after watching episode 5 of The Acolyte last night, my partner and I were talking about how it feels like May has a personality disorder similar to or like BPD, based on what we know happened on Brendock. It's possible that May already had a possible disposition for the disorder, especially with how it seemed like Osha really became her favorite person. But the events of the fire would definitely leave a child with trauma and a feeling of abandonment. A lot of May's action also within that episode, and especially episode 5, show a heavy case of black and white thinking from her. In general, there were a lot of details in the episode I enjoyed, but I feel like this one in particular heavily reinforced my theory about May. So
I mean, I don't really know enough about. I gotta crack the DSM if I want to answer that.
So
Part of it, I
yeah,
think, is the actor's not very good.
so I don't want to get too much into the Goldwater rule here and diagnosing fictional characters with disease, like with not disease, with mental health disorders or conditions that we are not qualified to speak on. But I did want to bring this up because I I have experience with BPD within my family, and a lot of what Adam is bringing up does kind of ring. Like I can see where that is coming from. So I probably best if we don't get into a long discussion about it. But I think there is something there
No,
about
babe,
like
we
the
got
trauma
time.
and other things.
I'm joking.
But yeah, so I think I do think that's a good thought.
I mean, the again, I don't really know enough to speak in a sort of expert, but what happened at as a kid, where May goes from working things out and trying to talk to it till let's burn this fucker down. Whether that's like, I don't think that's really indicative of any real world mental health disorder in particular, but it is
Well, I think that's more the
um,
triggering event to how May kind of thinks
okay.
about those relations. So there's a bit of that before, but then it kind of becomes that more black and white
Mm.
thinking about it. Uh,
Yeah, that makes sense.
and just like the way that she views those relationships. Maybe black and white isn't the right term for that specific element, but I think there's elements of that do work. But
Yeah, good question.
yeah,
Keep an eye open.
so that's I
For
think
sure.
everything we have. Anything else you want to touch on?
Nope.
You know what didn't happen during that?
What's that?
Was no phone call.
No phone call. That's
No
true.
one interrupted us for scheduling any kind of gas appointment, which means I need to reschedule the delivery of my oven. And we are going another week
Well, I
without
mean,
that.
can't your oven just sit somewhere until
Well, the people who take the so it's
electric
gas.
oven's
It
not
does
hard to install?
well. I want them to take away our old oven when they drop the new one off,
Oh,
and it's
okay.
not that safe to leave it disconnected with the new oven
No,
in front of it until because if
no.
the valve isn't great, it's not. Yeah, it's a whole thing. So I'm gonna be
Just keep a
calling them.
lighter next to it, and that way, if it starts leaking, you'll know instantly.
Yeah, it's the safest thing to do is just immediately start burning off all the gas, right? And you're great.
So,
But
do you use natural gas to heat your house too, or is it
yeah,
just
it's a
for the
gas
oven?
furnace. It's a gas
Okay,
furnace.
okay.
So I have to. Well, we're not heating the house right now, but I
Well,
can't
I
just like
see.
rip up all the stuff and like pull out the pipes till it's in the middle of the road and
I was
make
just
that the city
wondering,
of
like,
Ottawa's
because I've
problem.
got propane in my house, and all it
Right.
does is the fireplace.
Right. But you have like a tank that has to be filled within your house, right? Whereas
Oh,
we
you've got a
have
line?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's yeah, it's I can't just like empty her and then chuck the oven out because it's
Is it? Yeah.
yeah.
Is it like a big shut off switch outside your house, like a valve? Is there a valve outside and inside, or just one?
Yeah, I think there's like the shut off to the house is by the meter. And then we have a shut off that is currently turned off to my oven. And when the guy came to do the assessment to cap it, like it's not difficult to cap a gas line. I just don't want to fuck with gas. So he shut the valve already, and we were like, okay, he's gonna be back tomorrow. This is last Thursday. So I thought it wouldn't be a big deal. But it turns out the company is very much not.
Joke's on you. He went to 10-year of valve school for that, so you're gonna get a big fucking
It's gonna
big bill.
it's gonna cost so fucking much just to do this. It's literally like $20 to do it myself, but I
I mean,
don't
like,
trust
yeah, you'd
myself to
cut
do
it
it.
and put a cap over it.
Not even that, you unscrew it because it's these you're taking apart
Oh,
the thing. But it's
yeah.
yeah. Anywho, that's gonna do it for this week's episode. We'll be back next week talking about the Acolyte episode 7. That'll be on Wednesday night, like usual. And I mean, Thursday the 11th or Thursday the 18th will be Temptation of the Force, with or without Justin. We'll see how you feel.
Not good right now.
We did introduce ourselves on this episode, but that's fine.
Oh, oops, my bad. Let me do one intro. Look what happens.
Do you want to do it now? Do you want to say who you are?
I've been Justin, joined as always by my gassy friend Corey. It's been a pleasure.
Wow.